Amit, how are you?
Great.
I'm not sure if it's actually Channel 12 that reported this. I saw a report that Netanyahu told his cabinet that he's losing influence over Trump. Was it Channel 12, Channel 14 that reported that? Not sure if you saw it.
Too many reports, I'm not really sure, but I think I saw it in various places.
Do you think it's true? Do you think Netanyahu is losing influence over Trump?
I would say that it's quite hard to actually have those two perceptions simultaneously. One is that Israel is fully controlling President Trump, and one is that Israel is a vassal state of the United States. So I think Netanyahu has the gift of the gab when it comes to talking to President Trump, but I don't think President Trump can be dragged into anything, especially regional wars that turn into international energy wars. So to be honest, I don't think influence is the term here.
I'll tell you what I think, and I want to get your thoughts on it. So I think,
Sure.
I was just talking to Dave Rubin about this. I think this war, Israel played a role in Trump deciding this war was a good idea, Israeli intelligence, etc. I'm sure you've seen the reports, and that's based on discussions that I've had. I'm sure you've had similar discussions, and I would love to get your thoughts. But I think Israel played a role, but it's not only for Israel he did this war. There's other benefits to the US as well, from a strategic perspective. But I've been saying for a while that even before the ceasefire, that after we saw how this war went, it did not go as planned. It wasn't a multi-day war. Now we're talking about Iran controlling the Strait of Hormuz. The munitions on the American side had been depleted. It didn't go well from a strategic perspective. And I feel like Trump is upset with Netanyahu. And I think Netanyahu's influence over Trump, it varies. Israeli influence in the US, it varies depending on the leaders of both countries. But I think it's diminished significantly since the ceasefire. And we're seeing that unfold right now. 2 days ago, Netanyahu wanted to bomb Beirut, and we had reports that he didn't do that because after he had a call with Trump. Where's your stance on this? What do you think was the process in Israeli influence through from the beginning till now?
So there is a phrase in Hebrew, I'm not sure it exists in English, that victory has many fathers, but the failure is orphan. So while I definitely don't think this war can be defined as a failure, especially, or let's say specifically not yet, you're hinting that President Trump thinks so, and that's why when you go into a joint venture and then joint venture collapses, it's quite natural that you won't invite your partner over for barbecue on Saturdays. So this is give or take the thing. However, to be honest, I don't think this is the case, at least yet. President Trump, Prime Minister Netanyahu talk on a daily basis. They've held their last phone call yesterday, so perhaps it's going to happen again in a few hours. But as you mentioned, the US and Israel has overlapping interests, but it's not fully overlapping. For instance, the Strait of Hormuz question is an American question. It's not an Israeli one. Israel is not a world superpower that deals with such issues. So it was out of sight, out of mind sort of stuff for Israel. And I think that the main obstacles actually occurred on those very specific places in which there is daylight between Israel and the United States. I'll give an example, the Lebanon question. For President Trump, it's a collateral damage. There is no reason for him for the fighting to go on in Beirut as long as it endangers the ceasefire in Iran, which is the main arena. For Israel, however, these daily salvos of drones aimed towards Israel, Israeli soldiers, Israeli civilians, Israeli pupils, is something that is unbearable almost.
Let's jump to Lebanon. Just to get an idea of where you stand on this. So when let's go to Smotrich. When Smotrich makes a statement that Israel should level 10 buildings for every drone fired by Hezbollah. So do you think that will be wise policy, or that you don't think is acceptable?
I guess depends which buildings. I think Smotrich did not speak about, just 10 random buildings in Lebanon, but about the very specific place called Dahya, the stronghold of Hezbollah, the huge suburb of Beirut, under which Nasrallah's bunker was held, and probably the current leader of Hezbollah is still staying there as we speak. So yes, I think in a disproportional response for this drone attack might be one of the solutions. However, I don't think anyone in Israel is interested in just indiscriminately attacking and destroying buildings of innocent Lebanese civilians.
So I want to press you on this. How do you? So again, it's for every drone fired. Now in warfare, both sides will fire at each other. But imagine you have one side that says, for every bullet fired, I'm gonna do whatever. Or for every, because I want to use another example, a rocket launcher fired, I'm gonna level 10 buildings. Not Russia, not Ukraine, not Iran, not the US. It just seems pretty extreme for people from the outside seeing this. Israel's at war with Hezbollah. Israel should get rid of Hezbollah. Completely understandable from Israeli foreign policy and Israeli perspective. Hezbollah started attacking Israel after October 7th, and it's a threat to Israel. So that's completely understandable. People in the north want to go back home. And so I understand that argument. But then, don't you believe it's just going too far in your mind when you make statements like this? 10 buildings, and if Hezbollah fires, in Russia, Ukraine, sometimes there's like 300 drones in a day. That's 3,000 buildings destroyed if you're going to use that strategy.
I'm not sure we are on solid ground here when we try to claim or to argue that Russia and Iran are more humane than Israel. I would like to remind
I never said that. I'm just using that one strategy. Yeah.
That's why I don't want to have this impression. Iran has been firing at Israeli civilians since the very beginning of this war, while Israel attacked only military facilities. If there was a collateral damage, which is of course tragic, it wasn't the purpose, and everybody knows it. Iran tried and killed at least 55 Israelis using those ballistic missiles, and without the Israeli anti-rocket system, it would be something like more than 1,000 casualties. So this is one thing. As for the Lebanese border, the war on Lebanon began on October 8th, when Hezbollah began firing at Israeli civilians. It shot anti-tank missiles at peaceful Israeli civilians, thus killing dozens of them, destroying hundreds of houses. Otherwise, had this not happened, Israel would have never invaded Lebanon in the first place. And the same applies here. It was not the business of Hezbollah. Hezbollah was out of the war cycle. No one attacked Lebanon in this war. But 2 days after the war in Iran began, Hezbollah decided to expose itself as a full proxy of Tehran rather than the protector of Lebanon. And it started firing at Israeli children and Israeli civilians, and yes, Israeli soldiers, once they actually entered Lebanon in order to stop this threat, because the Lebanese army never bothered to do so. So yes, when it comes to disproportionate a response to an attack by a terrorist organization, I fully support it. No one, however, wants to kill innocent civilians just as a revenge. It was never the case. And that's why I mentioned Dahya. Dahya is the stronghold of Hezbollah. It's not an innocent, peaceful neighborhood. There are tens of thousands of Hezbollah members there. There are bunkers underneath. I guess that had Hezbollah built a bunker under your building or under my building, we would have noticed it. We would have opposed it. We would have protested against it. So yes, this is a sin of terror, and it should be treated as such.
So we agree on most things that you've just said. So I agree. I've said Hezbollah attacked Israel. Israel has a right to respond. And so that one we agree on. Also, you said how Hezbollah proved to be a more proxy of Iran than a protector of Lebanon. Yes, I'm extremely critical of Hezbollah. It's so much so that it's difficult for me to go to Lebanon. I need to conduct an interview there, and I couldn't go not long ago because of my stance on Hezbollah. So we agree on that front.
Birds of a feather flock together. Yes, I can enter Lebanon as well.
Now, of course, I have exceptions. I don't think you'll ever get exceptions, at least not now.
Absolutely.
So on the other thing you mentioned is the proxy. There was one more. The Dahya. So yes, Hezbollah has built underground facilities. Anyone that says otherwise is lying. Okay, not to the extent of Hamas, but Nasrallah was killed underground under a building that was destroyed to kill him. Okay, so these are facts.
Right.
Where I get concerned, and I become very critical, and I've become a lot more critical, by the way, today than, let's say, a year ago of Israeli foreign policy. And in the last 4 months, this year, extremely critical when it comes to Lebanon. Why? Is because there are certain lines that shouldn't be crossed. So up until 4 months ago, Israel's always responded whenever Hezbollah attacked by attacking Hezbollah. Sometimes very aggressively, leveled villages, caused a lot of destruction in Dahya, etc. But not like in 2006, which was a different strategy of hitting the energy infrastructure. What got me really upset with, really critical of Israel now, is when I see villages completely leveled in South Lebanon. Not talking about Hezbollah infrastructure. You know what I mean. Homes in their entirety destroyed. And then when the defense minister, when Katz says no Lebanese person, which is 20% of the population, can come back home to the south, the south of the Litani River, even after the war ends, I'm like, guys, from responding in self-defense to now, the intentions start to look very different to what I thought before. From self-defense to getting rid of a threat to maybe something more sinister. That is where I start to worry. A lot of people in Lebanon also worry.
Yes, and people, I guess the argument is that there is a demand for greater Israel, and allegedly there is a secret hidden scheme or plan to actually build settlements in southern Lebanon and to annex it to Israel. I would like to tell you, as someone who is quite to the right wing in Israel, that no one serious in Israel has these plans. No one was willing to actually deal with Lebanon or to actually use it to expand territorially. Lebanon is the equivalent in Israel to a place that should be abandoned, a region to avoid. The only reason Israel began systematically destroying villages in southern Lebanon was because those villages, those very villages, used as the as military bases for Hezbollah on its monstrous plan to invade the Galilee, exactly as Hamas did in the Negev, in the kibbutzim on October 7th, but in a way larger, more monstrous scale. That was the only reason. And then again, would you agree or would you come to terms as a villager with the fact that your village becomes a bunker for Hezbollah, that under your house a bunker is built, tunnels are built, that hundreds and thousands of terrorists of Hezbollah train in your village to invade Israel when the command arrives? I'll give you another example. The villages that were destroyed were mostly Shiite from this population that actually served as the human shield for Hezbollah, because that was the raison d'etre, or the way this axis, this Iranian axis, acted around Israel, Hamas, Houthis, and of course Hezbollah. But Christian villages have not been destroyed. There was a soldier 2 days that was killed this week because there was a command not to act against a church, not to operate in a church, although there was a danger to the forces. And actually, a Hezbollah terrorist used this church in order to shoot our soldier and kill him. So to actually argue that there is a systematic attempt to destroy villages just for the purpose of destruction, it's definitely inaccurate. Yes, the optics are horrible, but there is even a worse optic, and this is the optic of those villages used in order to invade Israeli villages and kill thousands of Israelis. That's exactly what happened on October 7th, and it would have happened, fivefold had it come to the Lebanon.
Yeah, so years ago, I would consider the whole Greater Israel theory, I dismissed it years ago. Then I started doing a deeper dive. I'm like, okay, there's something there, but it's a minority of Israel. They don't have that much influence. And then I'm like, look, I don't think a two-state solution is possible anymore, even though I believe in a two-state solution. But no, Lebanon, it's not going to happen. They have war with Hezbollah. When it ends, Lebanon's going to remain Lebanon. Syria is going to remain Syria. And I looked at them as going to compare them to Egypt and Jordan. But when people like Ben Gvir, and I know he's always used as a reference, okay? When people like Ben Gvir start advocating for settlements in Lebanon, he's advocated about it publicly. It's difficult not to take. I'll find the statement just to make sure it's accurate.
Yeah, sure.
But it's difficult not to take statements like this seriously from a minister. And I was also surprised last week when I learned Ben Gvir has the support of 20 to 30% of Israelis that see him favorably. And Ben Gvir said some horrible things that if an Iranian leader says them, would be, up in arms about it. That's why people are, including myself, are starting to get more worried about maybe not Greater Israel to include Saudi and Jordan, etc.
Sure.
But at least expanding territory to Lebanon. There's people, I've even had someone on the show, Ishael, my team will send me his name. Lisa, the gentleman I'm talking about, send me his name. But yeah, so people that do advocate for annexing Lebanese territory, and those voices are getting louder.
So, to be honest, I don't remember Ben Gvir speaking about settlements in southern Lebanon, but maybe he said something. Please let me know.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah, sure. Ben Gvir enjoys the support of something like, according to our latest poll on Channel 12, 6 to 7% of the popular vote, which is, it's not that, quite a few Israelis support him, but nonetheless, 93% of Israelis do not intend to vote for him in the election. I'm not a member of Itamar Ben Gvir's fan club. One of the reasons is because he speaks a lot and does so little, and he causes Israel huge damage, in my opinion, in the international arena. For instance, the way he treated those members of the flotilla towards Israel, towards Gaza. I think that they were provocateurs and they were provocative, and they should be banned from entering the territorial water of Israel and Gaza. However, I think Ben Gvir caused a lot of damage. And the same applies for Ben Gvir's statements regarding Gaza and Lebanon. I don't think it's a policy. I'm quite well sourced in the Israeli government, and yet I don't know about any plan to try to annex southern Lebanon. I think that the main sentiment of Israelis post-October 7th, and Ben Gvir plays on it quite sophisticatedly, is the fact that they feel petrified by seeing terrorists just half a mile from the border, because they saw what it might lead to. And that's the reason why Ben Gvir gains ground in the polls. But under no circumstances Israel is preparing to actually annex southern Lebanon or southern Syria or parts of Gaza.
So the statement, and by the way, I've been saying this, that exactly what you're saying. I've been saying it for a long time. I stopped saying it when the defense minister made the statement, 20% of the Lebanese can't come back home even after the war, and they started leveling villages.
Yes, but specifically because there is a Shiite majority in southern Lebanon, and because we must not ignore the facts. Southern Lebanon, used not as a tourism site or skiing site. By the way, it's one of the most beautiful places on earth, really. There was a phrase among Israeli soldiers in the 90s that southern Lebanon, if there is heaven, it looks like this, and if there is nightmare, if there is hell, it feels like this. They could have used it as heaven, and they used it as hell, and that's why each and every village that was used for many years as a stronghold for Hezbollah had to be destroyed, not because Israelis has aspiration to actually destroy those villages. No, in the past there was cooperation between Israel and Lebanon and the southern Lebanon, but once they began joining forces with Hezbollah in the mid 80s to the 90s to the first decades of this century, there was no other choice.
So Ben Gvir did say, we have more plans to encourage migration from Gaza, encourage migration from Judea and Sumaira, and settlement in Lebanon. So that was his statement in May 15, so 12 days ago. And I know most Israelis don't vote for him. First 9% is still a fair bit. But 20%, so it's not about who will vote for him, but 20% had a favorability rating of him, 20 to 30, 70 to 80 unfavorable, which was bigger than I expected. Now, I'm not saying there is a plan to expand Israel into Lebanese territory, but at least those concerns have been increasing.
Okay, but by the way, as for immigration, you can emigrate from the country you live in. I can emigrate from the country I live in. The only place on earth, save North Korea, from which people are not allowed by their government to actually emigrate from, even if they wish, is the Gaza Strip. So the only purpose, it was never an Israeli official plan or an American official plan to forcefully make them emigrate. It was just to open the gates for those who want to live this hell named the Gaza Strip. But if you know, if you have other details, let me know.
No, I don't have other details. It's more the worry. I think you know what I'm going to say. What people watch this and think is that Israel just made Gaza. And I didn't bring up Gaza because for me, it's just that one is heartbreaking to me.
Yeah,
it's become unlivable there, and the worry is that it's been done intentionally, or the word they've been used is Gazified. So when you make a territory become so uninhabitable that people will be like, I don't want to leave my homeland, but this place has become a hellhole. We just want to leave. And Arab countries are two reasons why they're not accepting Palestinians. One's because they don't want that territory. They want them to be expelled from the territory and that territory annexed. A lot of worry in the Arab world about that. And number two, there's been examples like in Jordan and Lebanon where having Palestinian refugees did not end too well for those countries. So two reasons why emigration or Arab countries are not welcoming Palestinians with open arms.
But I remember vaguely there was a reason why this war erupted and why Israel had to enter Gaza. I remember two reasons. One was October 7th, of course. And the second was the fact that Gaza functioned as a military base disguised as headquarters, as hospitals, schools. Under every single hospital, there were bunkers of Hezbollah. There were headquarters of Hezbollah. Hostages were held there. Of Hamas, of course, sorry. Birds of a feather flock together. So there was a reason why Israel had to destroy so many buildings in the Gaza Strip. There were tunnels. There are still, just yesterday, a friend from the IDF sent me pictures of yet another 5 different tunnels that were found in the Israeli control area. So after 2 years of Israel controlling this part of Gaza, there are still tunnels found every day. So for those who claim, again, against the optics, my reply so how would you react if this Gaza was situated half a mile from, I don't know, from Abu Dhabi or from London or from Paris? And I think that if we want to be honest with ourselves, if we think that optics, better optics, means immorality and crimes of war, so we have to be honest and admit that there is no way to defeat terror armies situated in cities, in urban cities, because it's always going to look quite ugly. But you didn't want to talk about Gaza.
No, I'm happy to bring it up. It's it's very complex. Like, first, I enjoy speaking with you because it comes from a place of logic. Because when I speak to people on this issue, either they're on one extreme where every single thing Israel does is for greater Israel, and Israel is just a genocidal regime, and everyone in Israel is genocidal, or it's on the other extreme where Israel is the victim and it's being treated unfairly by the international community. It's surrounded by aggressors. And I think those are two extremes, and it should expand its territory, etc. Like Yishai Fleischer, nice person, but like very extreme in his positions on that other side. But I enjoy this conversation because you are being pragmatic about it and just trying to understand where you come from. On Gaza, kind of keep it brief there before we move back to Iran. I just feel the solution could have happened before October 7th and could have been done differently, other than funding Hamas. I know this is a whole other debate, the whole Netanyahu funding Hamas to keep the Palestinian cause weak, etc. So it gets a lot more complex, and you have to go back all the way to the 40s. So a very, very, very complex issue. I don't have the solution. I'm not an expert there. I just feel like what's happening in Gaza, and I'll leave it at that, it is heartbreaking. In Lebanon, it's escalated a lot this year, a lot. I think what happens next will dictate, we're going to allow me to kind of make a decision there, because before Israel did pull out of most of the Lebanese territory and only had a few positions down
5
south.
outposts. Yes.
Yeah, 5 outposts. So that was a good sign, despite the ongoing bombing of Hezbollah. But for me, I just see Israel saw Hezbollah as a threat, and Hezbollah was rearming in the south. So let's go to Iran quickly.
Sure.
First, would you agree? I think you do disagree as well, because when I said Iran is a strategic loss for the US, I think you disagree on that, correct?
I think it's too early to call. It's still hanging by a thread.
Is it looking like that?
I think that's what I thought around Saturday or Sunday, when it looked like President Trump is eager to sign an agreement at any cost. Now, the equation, the quid pro quo, is quite clear. If sanctions are to be eased without Iran giving up its nuclear program, or the regime toppled, it means that the US lost the war. Yes, absolutely. Because, I mean, the US had one shot of operating in Iran. If you actually shot it and you missed, it means that, one, there isn't going to be a second bullet, and second, that Iran is here to stay. However, as far as I understand, it is not the case. President Trump still insists on having the enriched uranium evacuated from Iran, either by a military operation or by, handing over what he calls dust. And second, that sanctions are not to be eased unless it happens. So we can put aside the ballistic missile industry and the funding for the proxies. But when it comes to the nuclear program, let's admit it, that was the reason why the US entered this war in the first place. Why? Because no one wanted in the Trump administration to have another North Korea, an event of a lunatic country having reaching nuclear weapon without the US doing anything. That was the case. That was the raison d'etre of this war. And if it fails, it means that the war failed, and it was a strategic failure that is going to shape Trump's presidency for decades to come. But let's wait to see if this is the case that happens.
You don't think they were about to? You think the Europeans and the Omanis are lying when they said things were progressing in the negotiations and Iran was willing to concede? Because everything pointed that Iran wanted to avoid war with Israel, and especially with the US. If you look at all indicators, especially how the 12-day war ended, Iran did not want a war with the US. Do you agree that the negotiations were progressing well?
Okay, so here's the question. So here's my analysis. I think Trump was talking about, or was trying to reach an agreement that deals only with the Strait of Hormuz. The quid pro quo was, you open the Strait of Hormuz for our ships and vice versa.
I'm talking about the negotiations in Oman before the war.
Before the war. Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking, because you're talking about the goal being the nuclear weapons. Sorry about that. You talk about the goal being the nuclear weapons program, but based on all indicators, including from the Europeans and Omanis, what it seemed to me is that they were about to reach a deal there, but Trump wanted to take it a step further. He's like, you know what? Not only am I going to solve the nuclear issue, but I want to cause a regime change there and have more influence over Iran, have more influence over the Strait of Hormuz. It's great for us to have leverage over China, and it's great for Israel as well. So it's like 2 in 1. But the nuclear issue could have been resolved in Oman. Would you agree on that point?
Not exactly. We had experienced negotiations with fundamentalist Muslim regimes in Israel for many months. I'm speaking about the hostage situation. I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is to negotiate when your supreme leader is out of sight, hiding in a bunker. So it's very difficult to understand what he really wants. And I know what happens when a fundamentalist regime believes that something is so precious that giving up this very asset means the end of his empire. In the Hamas case, it was the hostages. In the Iranian case, it was the nuke. And that's the reason, in my opinion, why each and every negotiations each and every negotiation which focuses on actually stopping the Iranian nuclear program was doomed to fail, is doomed to fail, and will be doomed to fail. Why? Because if Iran gives up its decades-long dream about being a world superpower, it means that it is no longer Iran. It's rooted deeply in the fundamentalist point of view that is focused not only in controlling Iran, not only in controlling the region, but in controlling the world. I'll give an example. North Korea is not interested in making Kim Jong-un the supreme leader of the world or in controlling the entire Asia. This is not the case in Iran. I mean, I know it's quite weird to actually compliment Kim Jong-un for being so rational, but compared to Iran, yes, he's more rational. That's why any attempt was doomed to fail. And President Trump understood after months of negotiations that Iranians are playing on time. They were ducking, waiting for President Trump to end his term. Now, what Trump tried to do, and I'm not sure he succeeded, only time will tell, but what he tried to do is to actually flip the coin, to make time work at his side. That's why he actually replied for the issue with the Strait of Hormuz by actually declaring a blockade of his own. If every day Iran loses $450 million worth of assets, it necessarily means that in 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years, they're about to actually cease to exist. But the only problem is that time works against both sides.
To see if we agree on that, let's say because obviously we don't know what we don't know. We weren't there in these negotiations. If in these negotiations, Iran was genuine about giving up their nuclear program for the right concessions, let's say some lifting of sanctions and unfreezing of assets, do you think that deal would have been a good deal? Iran with no nuclear weapon, but still have their ballistic missile program, still have the same regime in place and the same proxy network. Would that have been a good deal for the US or not?
For the US, yes. For Israel, I would say that as long as the nuclear, yes, it's different. But then again, it's not fully overlap the interests of the sides of Israel and the United States in this alliance. It's exactly as it was in the Second World War. United Kingdom had different interests than the United States. However, I think as an Israeli that if I can actually set a scenario which I would define as successful, yes, taking the uranium and having a commitment of Iran not dealing with a commitment that can be enforced, that Iran will no longer have a nuclear program, yes, it's a huge success.
Yeah, and it's a very important point because from an Israeli perspective, this war is a success because Iran is a lot weaker. Now, they may come out stronger depending what happens next with the Strait of Hormuz, etc., but for now, they're a lot weaker. And that's why I asked you from an American perspective, would that be a win or not if it's a nuclear program? You said yes, and I agree because the US doesn't really care about the ballistic missile program, shouldn't care about the proxy network. You know, Hezbollah is not next to California, so there's not a threat to the US. Right. But that's what annoys me with these things. You know what annoys me is that when we have conversations like this, we agree on most things, but what we disagree on is the facts. Like you say, no, in Oman, Iran was stalling. I'm like, no, they wanted to concede. And it's impossible for both of us to prove it. Israel wants to annex some Lebanese territory. And you're like, no, they don't. They just want to get rid of Hezbollah. So like these unknowns cause most of the debates, at least for people that are pragmatic about different situations.
Absolutely. But, you know, in this case, in these instances, what we should focus, because, I mean, we weren't, both of us were absent from the rooms where it happened. So I would say let's count on history. Ask yourself 2 questions. 1, has Iranian ever given up anything that when it came to the nuclear project? I'm not speaking about buying time with like the agreement with they signed with President Obama. Yes. And the second question regarding Lebanon is, are Israelis really interested in occupying Lebanon? Just go to the polls. Israelis, you know that in Israel, go to hell and go to Gaza is the same idiom. That's what people in Israel thought about Gaza and still think. They are not really into making it a Riviera, and they're quite skeptical about it, let's admit. And the same, even 10 times more accurate, is about the situation in Lebanon. No one is really interested in having settlements in Lebanon. There has never been, by the way, settlements in Lebanon, unlike the situation in Gaza. So that's all I'm saying.
I wanted to wrap up. I want to ask you a couple more questions, if you don't mind. One is
Sure.
something I haven't looked into, but I've heard a lot about. The October 7th stand-down order. Was there a stand-down order at all? Do you know much about it? Is there something odd about it? And I'm not trying to imply that Israel intentionally caused October 7th, but the question is, from the things I've been hearing, is like, maybe Netanyahu's administration, to distract from the protests and the political issues, maybe they saw an attack coming, they let it happen, they thought it would be small to be able to respond, and then it got out of control. That's a possibility I'm looking at. Is there anything pointing to that being a possibility? And do you know much about the stand-down order that everyone talks about?
So the conspiracy you're describing is an anti-Netanyahu conspiracy. In Israel, those lunatics who believe in a conspiracy organized by senior Israeli figures belong to the pro-Netanyahu camp. They claim that it was the military or the security apparatus that hated Netanyahu. Yeah, absolutely. So, and to be honest, so in Israel, this conspiracy tries to say that Netanyahu is not guilty of anything when it comes to October 7th, and the truth, of course, is different. Netanyahu is fully responsible, and the accountability lies on his shoulders as for the failure to protect against October 7th, but he doesn't bear an inch of responsibility for the very same October 7th attacks. Israel is a small country. Everybody knows everybody. There is no chance, once in a blue moon, that something like this will be organized without, someone calling his friends and telling them, look, there is something monstrous going to happen. The Israeli government / the Israeli army is cooperating with Hamas in order to let them kill even only quote unquote 20 Israelis. So no, absolutely not. Unfortunately, conspiracies thrive in places that are hard to explain. And the hardest thing to
sorry, go ahead. Yeah. No, I thought you finished. Go ahead. The hardest thing.
The hardest thing to explain is how the Israeli sophisticated army and the Israeli so sophisticated intelligence that succeeds in pinpointly killing, a nuclear scientist in Iran and detecting something happening in Azerbaijan, failed to understand what was going on 5 minutes walk from the Israeli intelligence base in the south. Now, this is because people are unaware of the magnitude of what we call conceptia. The way you conceptualize your point of view, if you fail to understand that Hamas is no longer a terrorist organization, but it's part of the Iranian army. It has 2 Iranian commando divisions on your borders. So you think, okay, I can leave there only 500 soldiers unequipped, because worst come to worst, they are going to attack us in 2 places. You can never conceptualize a full-scale attack like the Tet attack in Vietnam in at the end of the 60s. That's the main failure.
So, just on the just a stand-down order, was there a stand-down order? Do you know much about it at all?
About, sorry?
A stand-down order?
Yes, but one more ridiculous phenomenon, it was that the IDF announced on its internet site what would be the dates in which the army would operate. We called it silencing, admama. That is to say that the IDF is like a high-tech company that goes to a vacation by the end of August. So yes, they announced it online on the IDF internet site. It's crazy, but that was the Israeli...
the report I heard, but I haven't. I'm not well versed of this over like Iran war Hezbollah, so I haven't done a deep dive. But what I've heard on multiple shows, and I've had one journalist on the show talk about it as well, Israeli journalist, is the sorry, not Israeli journalist, but a journalist that's been to Israel, is the a stand down order where soldiers were preparing to respond, but they were told to stand down instead of heading to the border.
Okay. So yes, the answer is yes, and it emanates from something different. The number one fear of the IDF prior to October 7th was the kidnapping or the hostage taking of Israeli soldiers from the border. No one envisioned a full-scale invasion into military bases in Israel. So the sense was, if you stay in your military bases some, I don't know, 200 meters from the border, then you're safe. That was the reason, not something else, not in order to allow Hamas to invade. And that was the reason. Of course, it was a failure, but that was it.
Cool. No, I really enjoyed the conversation. There's a lot more to discuss because
So did I.
It's because there's a lot of things. It's hard to get proper answers from someone that's doesn't get very emotionally charged about it, because obviously October 7th is very emotional and what's happening in Gaza is extremely emotional. So I enjoyed this conversation. I'd love to do it again, Amit.
Sure, my pleasure.
Check you out. You've got a great newsletter. You could.
So I just want to recommend it. I know I'm biased,
of course
but
you can.
it's called It's Noon in Israel, for those who want to learn more about what's happening in Israel and the Middle East. It's in English every day at 7 a.m. Eastern time, and you are more than welcome. It's Noon in Israel.
Perfect, man. I'd love to have you back on the show. Thank you, Amit.
So am I. Thank you so much, Mario.